Yeah, I'm still a bit tired from yesterday. Sunburned. I didn't realize till this morning nose.
Yeah.
And I wasn't thinking because I started my hike up toward Carnegie and University Hill, and I was a good 2/3 of the way up there when I'm like, oh, my bucket cap's in the trunk of my car. I'm getting sunburned because I'm not turning around to get it and then come back up.
I saw something, and I don't know if it's Facebook nonsense, but there's like a sunburn competition in New Orleans.
Why?
That's exactly what I saw. When I saw the pictures, I'm like, why? Why would you do that to yourself?
No.
Who would willingly? And one of these guys was just in nothing but Speedos, and he was just redder than a lobster. I'm just like, why? Just why?
Yeah.
I don't know why. Why would you do that to your skin?
No, yeah, I would not on purpose. I'm just an idiot, and I forgot my hat.
No, and speaking of idiots, I yesterday was also in the sun, and I sprayed my entire body in a 100, and I missed the back of my leg.
Oh.
So there's like a strip on the back of my leg that's like redder than a lobster. I'm like, fuck. SPF 100.
Yeah.
And it's just, I always get the highest almost you can go because I'm that white, and I still burn.
Yeah, I burn because I'm white. I burn, and then I go back to my normal color. I don't even tan. So I don't even get the benefit of a sunburn.
So I'm Irish. I get redder and redder. We just get red.
And I could feel it because I had, my other glasses that I just wear outside and for driving. I had those on. And at one point in time, I could feel it around my eye socket. So I'm like, oh, this is going to hurt tomorrow. My neck was what hurt in the shower. Everything else is okay. But as of today, yesterday was Agate's 60th anniversary.
Yes, that's right.
I got a whole lot more new information.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully I will have some time because that's going to be like a multi-parter.
Oh, yeah. Well, I already got mad at some Facebook Yahoo that went against agates, where those prehistoric gopher holes. Bunch of creationists went after that.
What?
Yeah.
What did they say?
That wasn't real. It's just like, nope, doesn't work that way. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you mean like on the Demon Helix Trail and yeah. Now I can't remember the name of the creature, but yeah,
it's a
prehistoric
gopher-like creature.
Yeah.
Bigger, dug spiral shapes, and of course the spirals filled with sediment, and they fossilized, and that's how you get the spiral shapes, and yada yada yada. Mm-hmm. If any of those people were from around here, they'd probably have grown up knowing that.
Yeah.
I find it weird. I don't know about you, but I don't think the creationist people, are as centralized here as in other places that are not from here because of agate.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that if you were a kid in public schools or rural schools, you went to agate,
mm-hmm.
you learned about it, nothing was bullshitted to you, history was what it was, and then you went off knowing that the world was millions of years old, not anything else. But yeah.
And there are also creatures today, and when I do this story, I'll be adding in, the creatures today, because off the top of my head, I can't think who they are, that still do those spirals.
Yeah.
Which is why even 100 years ago, when they found that big fossilized spiral. And there's two of them up there. Yeah, one is vertical and one is horizontal. And I just did the hand movement the wrong way. There are animals alive today that do that.
Yeah, so, absolutely. They just, It's kind of funny that I find most of this hubbubbery does not come from the locals. Because it just seems like the locals even know better.
Yeah.
It's like we've all been to agate, guys. Come on.
Yep.
Like we grew up going to there.
Yeah. I had a blast up there, so I'm resisting, since we're talking about a person from Scottsbluff today, I am resisting the urge to kind of gush about Agate's 60th birthday, so I'll just include that in the episodes that I write about it. But I will share one little tidbit with you. I got to meet Ida Red Bear yesterday.
Oh, nice.
She's married to Martin. She taught me quite a few new things about some pictures in the museum. Well, it's the James Cook Gallery, but it is their little museum, which is fantastic that I'm going to spread out. But she also told me, Mr. Jumping Bull, I forget his first name now. I have it written down for when I do the episode. Anyway, she ran into him one day, and they were talking about her heritage because she is, Pueblo and Apache.
Oh, okay.
And she was talking that her children are mixed because Martin Red Bear is Oglala and Rosebud.
That's crazy.
That's his ancestry. And so she was saying her children were Lakota, not Oglala and Rosebud. And Mr. Jumping Bull was like, no, your kids are not Lakota. And she's like, yes, they are. And she's thinking, yeah, they are Lakota. You can't take that heritage away from them, and you're Lakota too. They're talking two different things. Mr. Jumping Bull said, Lakota is a language. A person is not a language. They are a person. And then he asked, where's your husband from? And so he was like, no, your children are Oglala and Rosebud. They're not Lakota. And then she and I had this wonderful conversation about language and how language changes over time. And younger people.
Because I understand the Lakota as a Lakota, Dakota, and Oglala as nation names. But I could see that though.
Yeah.
Rosebud being from a tribe. But then would you have Pine Ridge?
Pine Ridge is Oglala.
So that makes sense. So Pine Ridge is Oglala, and but Rosebud is separate.
Yeah, Rosebud is separate and farther east. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was this fascinating conversation with her about language and how language works and how language changes over time and how younger generations, and she's a little bit older than me. I don't know how much. I'm not going to guess. I'm not going to go down that road, but just how she gets that and she understands that, and Mr. Jumping Bull was even older than her, and how they viewed it, and then how language changes. But the young folks that live on the reservation at Pine Ridge, they consider themselves Lakota. And so it was just this
and it
awesome.
even goes further than that, because there's a whole hydrogeny now that comes from like the native tribes of all Americas are one and stuff like that. So there's a lot of that goes on. So there's even people that don't distinguish at all.
Yeah.
It's like we're Native American, period.
Right.
It doesn't matter what tribe we're from. So I've kind of seen a lot of different viewpoints. And again, especially from the younger folks, it seems the younger people are pushing that. Yeah.
So it was really, really neat, and I could sit here and talk to you for an hour of all the cool things that happen at Agate, and I'm going to save that for the Agate episodes, but it was a super fantastic day.
Yeah, it's a cool place.
I just love that place. But today we're going to talk about a man from Scottsbluff. So we're about 50 minutes south. At least 50. I don't know. It takes me like 40 minutes to get out there. I don't know how long it's supposed to take.
Drive like a New Yorker.
Yeah. What? Speed limit 65? Well, my speedometer says 87, But I mean, if you think about it, when you head north of Mitchell, it's mostly straight the whole way up to Agate.
It is, but I do caution people because there has been a severe car wrecks in the places that aren't straight, because people just think it goes straight forever. Yeah. So,
it's
drive safe, drive slow, wear your seatbelt.
Yes, please drive safely. I've hit that. Part of it is the New Yorker in me, but part of it also is you're driving and you feel like you're going slower than what you are, so you go a little faster and a little faster and a little faster, and then you're like, oh my God, I'm doing 87. And then when you slow back down to the speed limit, you feel like you're crawling again, and so you're in that constant battle of that, and that happens to me every time I go up to agate. I think agate is supposed to be about 55 minutes, and I do it in 45, so I'm usually not speeding that much. But if I get tagged by a cop, I'll pay the ticket.
The biggest danger of those roads is you have no edge, and so if you hit the edge by accident, or if you're not paying attention, there's no bumper guards, there's nothing, there's that jiggle vibration that lets you know. Before you know it, you're off the road, and the intention usually is to jerk to the left.
Yep, and then you flip.
And then you flip over. Yep. And that has happened to, we actually just lost a life not too long ago to that. And another who was almost paralyzed. So it's a no joke matter.
Yeah.
To just like be cautious and drive the speed limit. Don't go too crazy, because it's like it goes. And then of course, if it's any other time, you have deer, you have elk, and anything else that can run out on the road and hit you. So don't be stupid. There's so many people, so many kids especially out there that have died because they're that stupid, and it's just like, don't do it.
And the weird thing is, in the winter, I typically drive 40, 45 on that road, because it's just not safe otherwise. And
if you do happen to pull over off to the side, if you do hit the edge, don't jerk.
Yeah.
Let off the gas and let into the ditch.
Yep.
You will live in that ditch. You will not, if you jerk off to the left. Yep. You will kill yourself. So there's like a big lesson there.
Yeah, that we didn't intend to do today.
Don't speed.
Yeah, and it does kill out here, and I've seen a lot of traumatic brain injuries as well, where even when the person lives, it's not good. But I do fall under that whole I don't know how to get rid of it. Most of my road rage is gone, but the speeding thing, and I have to be there yesterday, hit every time I get in a car, and it's a constant struggle with me. And I give my husband crap because he drives it. Okay, I think I'm legitimately allowed to give him crap, because if the speed limit is 35, when he hits 37, he slows back down to 35.
It's my husband's fault. It's all my husband's fault.
So I think I can give him some crap for that. But he is a very safe driver. And
my husband's terrified of me, but I am one of the safest drivers. I think I've gotten 2 speeding tickets in my life, but Jason's still terrified of me, especially when it goes to Denver, because I drive like I've been in the city, which I did. I lived in the city for 3 years in Minneapolis, and then a few times about a year in Denver, and yada yada yada. So I go through cities.
Yep.
And I drive like
a city person.
Yeah, like a bat out of hell.
Yep. I do the same thing when we went back for my mom's funeral and landed in Newark. He's over in the passenger seat, white knuckling it, and I could hear him from time to time. And I'm like, dude, it's fine.
That's exactly what he is.
And I'm just like, dude, it's fine. Just don't talk to me, because when you talk to me, then you you split my attention, and now I can't pay attention to the road.
See, I'm starting to realize now that about the time I get to Fort Collins, like about an hour away from Denver, I tried to dope him up on Dramamine or something. To go to sleep.
Just take a nap. Take a nap. You'll be fine.
Just go to sleep. You'll be fine.
So back here in the late 1800s, we didn't have to worry about any cars, did we?
No.
Just
we got horses.
Yep.
Got all these horses.
So about 12 episodes ago, we did a story on the Tri-State Land Company headquarters building. And during that research, I had learned about the guy who formed the company and was instrumental in early Scottsbluff. So today we're going to talk about Heyward Gibbons Leavitt and his life on Storytelling on the Plains. We did do a little bit of his background as it related to the company and the building. And again, he's also involved in the sugar beet factory So we'll go into a little bit of that, but I tried not to go too much into the weeds because I wanted to just stick with Mr. Leavitt and not do the sugar beet factory because that's 125, 130, about 130 years old, I think the sugar factory is, something like that. Anyway, I want to keep sugar factory stuff where it needs to be and not get too much into the weeds. So when we do get to the sugar factory, we'll probably talk about Heyward again, but that's just because things intertwine, you know. It's like if I did a story on Hod Cosman, it's going to intertwine with a bunch of different things. So if we do a story on Platte Valley Companies, the bank, he owns it. He started it. So it's going to come up. If we did a story on the Preby lands, which is the Platte River Basin Environments, and it's this land that's been put into a trust, and the public can go hike on it. Some of it allows hunting, but I've hiked on most of the Preby lands out here. The ones I haven't is just because I haven't gotten to them. And so Hod was also instrumental in getting that set up, and he owned some of the property and stuff. So, you know, if we did those, there's 3 stories where he's going to be intertwined on it. Yep. Just given the nature of the way the town is and how things work. So anyway, Heyward, I think, personally, is an important character in the history of this city because he propelled the early sugar beet industry, and in the early 20th century, he was often called one of the founders of the sugar beet industry, and he was very forward-thinking and influential in things. He was kind of a guy that, you know, if you needed to get something done, if he hadn't already thought of it, he would help you find a way to get your crap done. So according to A History of Western Nebraska and Its People, Heyward was born in New York City on March 22nd, 1861. And I know you see that mistake there, Connor. I didn't have time to fully proofread before we got to going because I went to Agate, so I didn't proofread the 10 pages of the script. I made an executive decision and went and had fun instead. One day I'll go back and fix that typo. So Heyward's parents, Henry S. and Martha A. Young Leavitt, were both born at Brooklyn, New York. And this is not the first time we've had Brooklyn people come out here. So if you've ever been... Yeah. Although, you know, if you've ever been to Brooklyn, you can understand why they come out here. His father died in New York City in 1904, aged 78, while his mother still resided there when the book A History of Western Nebraska and Its People was published in 1921. I went to have a look at findagrave.com, and his mom died on December 22nd, 1924. So just a few years. Yeah.
22nd.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was born on March 22nd.
I know. Did I remember to wish you a happy birthday this year?
I try to forget my birthday, so it's better that you didn't.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I know I haven't written
I'm how
down.
old? I don't want to know how old I am. Don't tell me how old I am. I don't want to celebrate that.
And for me, it's not a case of I want to hide how old I am. It's just like, people ask how old I am, and I'm like, okay, it's 2025 minus 1970, and then you come up with 55, and then I'm like, wait, but I haven't had my birthday yet, so I'm still 54.
No, you'll have to forgive a gay man his vanity.
Yeah, there you go. Mine is just I suck at math.
Nobody needing to know I'm any older than I am.
Connor's really 72.
Yeah, I look like I'm 72.
No, you don't. Oh, my God, no, you don't. Oh gosh, without getting I'm not getting into political stuff, but there was a Reddit thread yesterday talking about someone who is very visible in the current administration, and there were so many, what? She's only 27? I thought she was like 50. And everybody had her pegged late 40s, early 50s, and she's 27.
That's what the administration does to you.
Yeah. That's how quickly it ages you. So Heyward's parents had 7 children, and he was the only one who settled in Nebraska. His sister Emma was married to William Fellows Morgan, who was in the cold storage business in New York City, and he was president of the local YMCA for 15 years, and Emma was president of the WCTU, which was the Women's Christian Temperance Union.
No drinking, folks.
Yeah. And
New Yorkers, you just had to bring that to us. You had to bring that our way. What were we doing?
Yeah.
We were just sipping in the bushes. You didn't have to.
We had our moonshine.
You didn't have to bring that our way.
I know. And I thought about looking for more of his siblings, but that's just too much work. And he's the only one that came out here, so I don't care because they didn't come out to live here. And 2, I literally spent about an hour reading about the cold storage business, and it's not something we're ever going to cover. So
to be clear, because now I have to know.
Yeah.
Are we talking about human bodies or like beef?
Food. Yeah.
Okay.
Food. Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's a couple of cold storage businesses back there.
And even though we eventually got refrigeration, and when I was a little kid in the late 70s, early 80s, folks from my mom's generation and my grandma's generation would still say they were going to put something in cold storage. My grandma didn't really use that. She used fridge, but I could tell kind of just within my family, I could kind of tell economic wise who had money and who didn't growing up, because the ones that grew up really poor had, cold storage things. And we had several of my family members, including the house I grew up in, we had the basement and we also had the cellar. And they are 2 very different things. And I think a lot of people that are young nowadays don't know that. They don't understand
even when
that.
I was growing up, we had a basement and a cellar. Yeah. There were 2 different things.
And so I have a basement. I would never refer to this area as a cellar because this is not a cellar.
No.
Technically, I have a fridge in my basement that I put food in, but it's not a cellar.
Well, and even technically, is this really a basement compared to what basements were? I mean, basements weren't finished things.
Yeah.
They were. We are in a finished basement. We have carpet, and we got nice walls, and we got a nice place. But like the basements
and ceilings
when I were,
and lighting.
The basements that I grew up as a kid were like still concrete, like concrete floor.
Yes.
It had the potential to flood up to your knees,
yes.
and not to your waist.
Yep. My grandma's basement had a sump pump in it.
Yep.
That some pumps are
pump went out.
Because everybody had to run down to the basement and move things. And I just learned at a very early age, if you don't want to lose something valuable, it needs to be up. And so when I went to college, remember the big CPUs, the towers for your computers? They were never on the floor. No matter where I lived, they were always on my desk, because I grew up in an area that if it flooded, I might not be home when it floods. And now that happens. Didn't matter, my apartment was on the 2nd floor. The computer was always on top of my desk. And that's just kind of like a side effect of the way, it's just how things were. And if I wanted to keep something, I needed to make sure it was at least 3 feet off the floor, so that I didn't have to worry. If I had to go down and get it, I could still go down and get it, and it would be okay.
And I only remember as a child, and this could be a false memory, but I think my mom could confirm. We lived in a house in New Orleans, and the basement flooded, and my bedroom was down in that basement, so I remember being quite upset about most of my stuff being destroyed.
Yeah, it sucks when that happens. So see, we've just taken like a 5-minute detour. I spent an hour reading about that stuff, and then I was like, I need to get back to Heyward, and I don't care about his other siblings. So that's just kind of how things go, and now I got my cat digging at my feet again. So A History of Western Nebraska and Its People also noted that Heyward came from solid financial ancestry. Ow, sorry. The dangers of having a cat down here. So his paternal grandfather, David Leavitt, who was a native of Goshen, Connecticut, was president of the American Express National Bank for many years in New York City, and his maternal grandfather, Henry Young, was also a banker there and the financier that lent the money to complete the dredging of the sanitary canal in Chicago. He was the builder of the first gas plants in New York and Chicago. Henry S. Leavitt, Heyward's father, was a banker in New York City during the greater part of his life. He was a Democrat in his political views, and both he and his wife belonged to the Episcopal Church. So his family had a bit of money. That meant he also had educational advantages that most other people didn't have. As a youth, Heyward prepared for college with the help of tutors and attendance in private schools. Just being able to afford a tutor means you got money. If you're also going to private schools, you got lots of money. He was graduated from Harvard University in 1882, and 2 years later he was graduated from Columbia Law School. He stayed in New York City where he specialized in patent law. Then around 1887 he became interested in his grandfather's gas plant business. He made a point to attend the installations of several plants on the East Coast before heading to Chicago and then to Grand Island, Nebraska, where he operated and was the president of the Grand Island Light and Fuel Company. Once in Nebraska, his attention turned once again to this time. I can't speak today. Once in Nebraska, his attention turned toward sugar beets. So now you know how he got to Nebraska. Mm-hmm. First his grandfather's business, and then he was like, oh, what's this sugar beet stuff? And so we need a little bit of backstory about the sugar beets to see what was going on at the time and probably what got Heyward interested in the crop. And I pulled from like 5 different sources, so hopefully I got the timeline together right, because some... there are some people that don't get proofread before things go out there and some people that do. And it would be like me if I just started talking about, I went to Co-op today and bought some hamburger meat. If you're in Scottsbluff in 2025, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But you should always write from the perspective that people don't know what the heck you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So you need to explain what the co-op is. You can make a guess what a co-op is, but you really need to explain it. And so some of the sources I went to didn't explain it. Some of them didn't have timelines. So I was trying to piece all these sources together in a logical manner, and hopefully I don't confuse anybody with this. So Jim McKee wrote an article in the Lincoln Journal-Star titled "Nebraska Sweetened Things Up," that in 1873, the Grand Island Independent editorialized about the success that Europe, particularly France and Germany, had experienced in growing beets and refining sugar. The newspaper and others questioned whether western Nebraska might afford a perfect place to experiment with the relatively unknown crop. It's kind of funny because you're late 1800s here, and not a lot of people in America know about sugar beets. Mm-mm. And you fast forward 125 years, and everybody knows about them. Well, okay, more people.
I was going to say, that's actually not particularly true.
Yeah, it's true.
I should say all of Nebraska knows about them.
Mm-hmm.
I've had, even as a kid, had plenty of kids come from North Carolina who never, ever saw such a thing. And we explained that it made sugar, and that really made their eyebrows go up. And we would pick them off the side of the road.
Oh, yeah.
And we would like scrub them and cook them up and have everyone taste them. And there's kind of mixed results, because if you taste it raw, it tastes like it doesn't taste like a sweet potato as in like a yam. Mm-hmm. It tastes like a sweet potato as like a potato that had sugar dumped on it.
Oh, gross.
It's not very pleasant.
Yeah. So. Nasty. Okay. So Henry Koenig and others in Hall County began working with the University of Nebraska, which gave beet seeds to about 75 local farmers to begin experimentation. As success was reported, additional seeds were ordered from both France and Germany, with the latter supply proving best. So Germany had the best sugar beets, and that's where they got their seeds from. About 1887, a subscription to build a Nebraska refining plant had raised $100,000, and 80 acres of land were acquired near railroad connections for construction. So we're still on the eastern end of the state with the sugar beets. The Oxnard Company announced that if the state would provide a production bounty, it would build a plant. The great question arose as to whether state funds should be used to promote private businesses, but the legislature did pass a 1 cent per pound bonus for sugar produced from Nebraska beets or sorghum, which was raised to 2 cents the next year. Governor Thayer announced in 1890 that the Oxnard plant, which had opened at Grand Island, had cost the company between $500,000 and $750,000 to build, produced 1 million pounds of sugar in its first year, and proved to be the second such factory to operate successfully in the United States. A second plant was opened in Norfolk in 1891, and though the retention of bounties was encouraged to prevent a monopoly, it was reduced back to 1 cent per pound and passed over Governor Holcomb's veto. Nonetheless, the drop in the bounty rate caused the Norfolk plant to close and move to Colorado in 1905. And I believe that plant is still there in Colorado. At the same time, Heyward was learning everything he could about the business. He became a beet seed distributor in Hall County, and he also bought a farm there so he could conduct his own experiments, which he then used to teach other farmers how to make the same tests that he was conducting. And for the next 8 years, he lived there designing implements as well for sugar extraction from beet. So he's not just experimenting on how to get the best beet. He's making new implementations to extract the sugar from the beets. He was sought after for his work, and people from all over the country came to his farm to learn from him and learn how to use the implements he created. So Jack Preston, who is a local dude, he's still alive, he wrote an article in Agricultural History titled Heyward G. Leavitt's Influence on Sugar Beets and Irrigation in Nebraska. And he wrote that after Leavitt came to Nebraska, he pursued his interest in agriculture, renting farms to experiment with growing sugar beets, purchasing seed for his own trials, and giving seed to his neighbors to try out. So in the first source that I had, he only had one farm. Preston is saying he had farms, and then he's also saying that he gave his seed out to the neighbors, whereas the previous source said he was selling seed. So, again, make your own conclusion. It's sort of the same but different. He also spent a great deal of time improving sugar beet farm equipment. He traveled to Germany to gain firsthand knowledge of sugar beet culture and subsequently hired Louis Hoche, a French expert in beet culture, to help the Grand Island area farmers. In November 1889, he purchased several farms totaling 920 acres, land that became an even larger proving ground for sugar beets. Earlier in 1889, Henry Oxnard, Leavitt's Harvard classmate, passed through Grand Island and stopped for a visit. His family, who had sugarcane investments on the East Coast and in Louisiana, was starting a new French sugar refinery, then scheduled for shipment in California. And so this is going to play into this next source that we're going to get to. But so Preston found some sources that he purchased several farms totaling 920 acres, and I can also see where the article in the Journal Star, I think that was written in 2003, maybe didn't have access to that kind of stuff. Preston's article, I think, was 2014. So you've got better access to stuff, and I think the guy that wrote the article in the Lincoln paper probably did not come out here to the museum to get the research that's stored here, and Jack volunteers at Legacy. So, that's probably why Jack has more details. Anyway, Heyward convinces his friend, the local promoters, and the financial backers to change the shipping location of the refinery to Nebraska. So the Oxnard Beet Sugar Company opens in Grand Island in the fall of 1890, and everyone starts jumping on the sugar beet wagon because everybody sees dollar signs. Several more plants are opened in the state as well, and a fellow Harvard graduate, R.M. Allen, was the manager of the Standard Cattle Company, and he was in Wyoming, just outside of Cheyenne. He was using the Ames plant to process the beet tops to fatten up the cattle at the Omaha markets. And according to Jack Preston's article, Allen and Leavitt convinced the University of Nebraska to establish an experimental farm near Ames, Nebraska, to further the study of sugar beet culture and to aid the farmers in the best practices of beet raising. In 1899, the sugar beet experiments were transferred from the university's experiment station near Lincoln to the sugar beet experiment. So there's a lot of Harvard folks that end up out here in western Nebraska for a variety of different reasons. And it just happens that Heyward's out here, and then he's got a fellow graduate friend in Cheyenne that's in the cattle industry, and then his other friend that he helped convince to change the refinery destination of his product. So they got the financing for a refinery, which opened in 1899, which the Standard Beet Sugar Company, a New Jersey corporation, was formed with Leavitt as its president and general manager, Allen as the vice president, and Joseph G. Stearns as secretary, and Allen and Leavitt owned 87% of the common stock. Again, according to the history of western Nebraska and its people, which I want to remind people that it can be opinionated at times. We've quoted from it a lot, and it is informative, but sometimes it does get opinionated, which, whatever. That's what they did at that point in time. We probably wouldn't do that today. We'd want to be more factual and stick to the facts and not opine on things. In 1900, Mr. Leavitt organized and financed the Standard Beet Sugar Company and erected a factory in the village of Leavitt, where the earlier operations of the company were carried on before the plant was moved to Scottsbluff. No less interested was Mr. Leavitt in the great subject of irrigation. In 1902, he came to this county, and after a thorough inspection of the valley, assumed charge of the farmers' irrigation project, then in the hands of a receiver. As previously indicated, Mr. Leavitt has never been an idle dreamer. He has the vision, and with it has the sound judgment that ensure his dreams coming true. His first practical move was the purchasing of 36,000 acres of land. 4 years later, he organized the Tri-State Land Company, which he financed in the construction of the canal at Scottsbluff. At that time, Scottsbluff and Bridgeport had 150 families, and representatives of only 8 of those are here now. Mr. Leavitt at one time owned the controlling interest in the Winters Creek Irrigation Company, was concerned in developing the plants on the Republican River and the Pathfinder Dam, and in all progressive enterprises that have done so much for this section in a substantial way. Mr. Leavitt has assisted by the expenditure of time, money, and legal advice. At present, he is looking mainly after his extensive agricultural interests, holding large land leases, although in earlier days he leased at one time as large a tract as 13,000 acres. So this is a very glowing review of Heyward. And if you remember back to the tri-state episode that we did, he got into a lot of financial difficulties, and I'll bring that up here just in a second. But, A.B. Wood, was it A.B. Wood who wrote the book, A History of Western Nebraska and Its People? He writes glowingly of people that he likes. Mm-hmm. And he just says, hey, he was involved in this, and this, and he's this great dude. And yes, he did have this vision for things in the future, and he'd get in early on things, but then he had trouble paying his bills and doing this and making stupid mistakes. And, even if it's your friend, and I would hope that even if someone talked about me after I was dead, don't just talk the good things, because
talk some shit.
Yeah. Feel free when I die. Say what you want. You can say what you want about me now. But none of us are perfect. We make mistakes. Some of us make bigger mistakes than others. And I'm not this perfect, super duper glowing person. In general, I think that I am kind, but I make dumb mistakes. I say stupid things from time to time.
Yeah, you don't want to be simpering.
Yeah. That's just not good. And you find that in a history of Nebraska and its Western Nebraska and its people. And it's just the way that the guy wrote. So if you're aware of that going in, you and especially if you know the rest of the history of Heyward, you're like, this is a glowing review. And it's just like he couldn't do any wrong. Anyway, so McKee also wrote in that Lincoln article that Heyward built a new sugar beet plant at Ames for the Standard Beet Sugar Company, which I had just mentioned. He hired August Gus Helt as his field man. Gus had immigrated from Germany and was working in Omaha, so he already kind of had the experience, and Heyward basically just poached him. According to McKee, the pair had learned that perfect weather for growing sugar beets was an uncontrollable, off-and-on repetition of water and sunny, dry conditions. The obvious answer was irrigation, which could control the water supply. And to that end, W.H. Ferguson of Lincoln was enlisted to build the Tri-State Canal Company. When lack of funding stymied construction, Leavitt reorganized it as a land company. As the project was completed, land was sold to area farmers with the proviso that the beet crops would be refined at a new Scottsbluff plant. So we're already kind of seeing the beginnings of the sugar factory here, and I am not going to get too deep into that. But the sugar factory is a co-op, and that's kind of its beginnings right here, right from the very start. And if you want to learn more about Tri-State and what actually went there, check out our previous episode on it. Jack Preston went on to say, good-yielding beets with a high sugar content could be grown in Ames, but the eastern Nebraska weather was a problem. The summer rain was undependable, and the fall was often too wet, causing disease, decreased quality, and harvesting problems. By contrast, it became evident that beets could be grown further west by irrigation so that the timeliness of water applications would be optimized. Beets had been grown in garden plots since 1887 in the developing North Platte River Valley near present-day Scottsbluff, which is about 400 miles west of Omaha. Improved irrigation systems to provide water for growing a large acreage of sugar beets in the semi-arid climate of western Nebraska would be required, however. And we get about 13 inches of rain annually.
Although not recently.
Yeah, I was going to say, Connor, what have we gotten recently?
Recently we got more than that.
Yeah. I mean,
and we're looking to get more.
Yeah. What was it? A couple of days ago, it was like 2.5 inches. We've gotten a lot of rain.
We've gotten our water and then some, and it's still coming. But
Yep.
climate change has changed all those averages. But still, it's still a good place to grow sugar beets. It's still dry enough. There
Yep.
hasn't been much cause to change that.
Yeah. So you can kind of see here why he got involved with the Tri-State Land Company, and why when things originally started and they kind of faltered, he stepped in. He's like, no, this is what we need. Oh, and irrigation is what we need for these sugar beets too. So he starts with the irrigation, and he owns, the property and is involved in the Pathfinder Dam. And for those of you who don't know, the very, 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 very simplified version of how the water gets to us, it starts up in the Colorado Rockies and comes down through Wyoming and goes through these series of dams before it reaches us, and then it continues east. And a lot of people don't know as well that Lake McConaughey is part of that canal system. Yeah. So he does see, he has that vision that he's like, if we do this and this and this, we're going to be successful with sugar beets here. So,
not just that, but water conservation. I hear a lot about Colorado trying to come after our water.
Yeah, they're still fighting about all of that. So that's a never-ending battle, I think. At least, we don't shoot and point guns at people anymore.
No.
At least not now. Let's hope it never goes back to that. There's a lot more about the sugar factory and irrigation, but he gets really, really deep into the sugar beet story, and I want to stick with Heyward's story. And I would also like, there's a gentleman in town named Larry Gibbs. His book is authored by Lawrence Gibbs, so if you go look for it, you can look. It's an entire book about the sugar beet industry here and how it started. And Larry is very, very knowledgeable on the sugar beet history. So, maybe we'll be able to get him to come and talk. At the very least,
I think that'd be cool.
Yeah.
It is a fascinating. I mean, it is a part of Scottsbluff. It's really the reason we've survived to this day. Is the sugar beet industry. So yeah, it's definitely a part of this town.
Yep. And you had a lot of people that came here with the railroad, and when the railroad was completed, they stayed here and they went to work at the sugar beet factory. And it is a huge part of the history of this area, and most people drive past it every day and don't even think about it.
Still employs quite a percentage of our community. Keeps them all running, including the farmers and everything. So
Yeah. So things went from bad to worst on the eastern end of the state. The weather sucked there for sugar beets, not in general.
You can say in general. It sucks over
there.
Yeah.
I remember when I lived in Lincoln, I would walk out of my second floor apartment and open the door. I'd go down the flight of stairs, open the door, and it was like 50 feet to the little mailbox row. I'm completely soaking wet with sweat by the time I walked back. I walked about 100 feet.
Yep.
And so I made a point most days during the summer of not taking a shower till after I got the mail. And if I took a shower earlier, I'm not going out and getting the mail today because I need another shower. It was gross. I hated it. Oh my God, it was terrible.
I guess I got used to that in Sioux Falls. But when I was growing up in high school, I took a glass blowing course out in the University of Hastings.
Okay.
And I fell in love with the University of Hastings. It is a remarkable college. I encourage any young folk to go out there and check it out. There's so much cool stuff. But one thing I remember, they always stuck to me. Everyone asked if I liked Seattle. I'm like, why are you always mentioning Seattle? It's like, because that's what we have as far as weather. You never see a blue sky in Hastings. It's almost always overcast. I said we don't know why. It's just kind of how it is. But it's always overcast. You almost never get a clear blue sky. And sure enough, the entire time I was there, there wasn't a blue sky. So I don't know. It's interesting places.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe some people like that kind of stuff. I know when the first time after I had lived out here several years, Anyway, it gets hot here, but you don't get that humidity out here.
Not west, no.
And when I went back to New York, I was dying. I grew up without air conditioning in New York, and you get the humidity. So, yeah, it might be 78 degrees, but it's 97% humidity. And you're just like, oh. And I'm sitting there at my mom's house, and I'm going, how did I grow up here? Because this is gross.
What's really funny is if you go to Phoenix during the summer and you have all these people just dying of heat, and if you're from western Nebraska, you're completely fine because it's that much less humidity. So the heat's just on you. So it's a little unpleasant, but it's completely bearable, at least to me.
Yeah, and you adapt.
And, well, you don't sweat. I mean, your
okay.
Your sweat literally like burns off your body as you go.
Okay.
When they say it's a dry heat, it's a dry heat.
Okay.
Like we think we are technically in the biomes of a desert, but we're
semi-arid.
We're semi-arid, usually called a high steppes or high plains desert. So in a way, we're kind of like Phoenix because Phoenix does have the greenery we do, but it just all gets evaporated on the hottest days like that, and then it's just
they're at a much lower latitude than us too, so
it's all completely dry. So I see other people who are from southern states like Texas, and they're just like miserable because grew up this way and like this is hot to them, and here I'm just like, oh, this is great, this is like wonderful, what are you talking about? At least it's not humid. It's like I'm not like no part of my body is sweating, like I like this is nice.
So weather's relevant, folks. Even when I went to Hong Kong, I spent two weeks in Hong Kong. It was unbearably humid.
I can imagine that being humid.
And we were there 15 days, so 2 weeks, whatever. And I would say probably about day 12, I was starting to get used to it, and I'm going, okay, now I understand how all these obvious white people are wearing shirts and ties, and it's a long sleeve shirt because they've adapted. They've been here long enough that it's a cooler day for them.
Oh yeah, that was funny in Phoenix too. When I'd go in the wintertime in like shorts and a t-shirt, and everybody has long sleeves out. It's like it's 80 degrees outside. What are you guys doing?
Yeah. When I took a trip with Paul to Italy, Rome we went in the wintertime, and it peaked at like 53, 54 degrees, and I'm walking around in t-shirt and jeans, and everybody that lives there has winter jackets on. I'm like, okay, when I left Nebraska, because we lived in Lincoln at the time, I go, the day we left, it was -5, and they go, what? And so when a friend was picking us up at the airport, I called her. I don't know if we were St. Louis, Minneapolis, Chicago, somewhere we had to change planes. I said, hey, when you come pick us up, can you please bring our jackets because we're freaking cold now. But Italy was fantastic because it was in the lower 50s, but I literally had just come from -5. So it was nice and warm and beautiful to me there. So anyway, the plant was closed in Ames, and Alan no longer dealt with Omaha, and that's the super short version. He basically, it wasn't really cost effective. If you think about it, you got your cattle in Cheyenne, and you're sending everything to be processed in Ames, Nebraska, and then he's keeping the beet tops as well to feed to the cattle, and having that processed in Ames as well. It's just not cost effective to do that. So he had stopped doing it. So there's less product being produced in Ames, and the weather sucks. So Heyward was right in jumping the gun and coming out here to Scottsbluff to get a factory going. But I also wanted to skip back just a little bit to 1889, which is just a couple years earlier. Heyward married Alvina Weller in 1889. She had been born in Saxony, Germany, and her father Conrad was an early settler near Grand Island. So we've got these German connections everywhere, not just to the beets, but to the people. And Heyward is surrounded by these Germans, and my assumption is Germans that know about sugar beets. So Alvina's dad was also a farmer and a stockman, so he's probably doing sugar beets out there. Heyward and Alvina had one daughter and 3 sons, and at the time of the publication of A History of Western Nebraska and Its People, Martha, his daughter Martha, had just finished a 3-year course at Radcliffe College in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Heyward Lathrop was starting at Harvard College. David Henry was also attending school in Omaha, and George Conrad was in school in Scottsbluff. So I'm assuming George was still in high school, but Heyward's making a decent living. These are not cheap schools to send your kids to, and especially in 1921, only...
Yeah, Radcliffe, Cambridge,
Yeah.
holy cow, Harvard.
Yeah.
Radcliffe, Cambridge, and Harvard. Holy crap.
So they're doing well for themselves with what he was doing. So back here in 1906, the Great Western Sugar Company purchased a bunch of land in Scottsbluff for a factory, and it was built with new equipment, but also equipment from Heyward's just closed factory in Ames. And he spent from 1907 to 1909 convincing Great Western to buy that Leavitt factory and move it to Scottsbluff. So he's convinced it's going to work here. He doesn't have the money to bring his stuff here, but he also knows if you leave it there in Ames, it's just going to rot. Nobody wants it. No one's doing sugar beets out there anymore. So it's cheaper to have his stuff trucked out here than build new stuff, but he also doesn't have the finances. So he spent 2 years talking to Great Western saying, no, dude, take my stuff. Things still aren't too good for Heyward, and I'm going to read again from Jack Preston's article a little bit about his finances. In 1909, the Tri-State Land Company bondholders decided Leavitt was not properly managing the canal building and land sales and relieved him of the presidency. In a letter to Leavitt dated February 11, 1909, company director Edward A. Cudahy stated, "I feel like asking the directors of the Tri-State Land Company to ask for your resignation. Unless you can conduct yourself a little differently, there isn't anything to do but to ask for your resignation." Leavitt remained a large shareholder involved in tri-state affairs, but he was no longer in charge. So there's a salary he's losing. The board of directors contracted with Payne Investment Company of Omaha. They were colonization agents to sell some of the tri-state land. Their Payne special trains from Omaha to Scottsbluff brought land seekers to buy farmland in what they promoted as the North Platte Valley of the Nile. From Scottsbluff, they motored potential land purchasers to choice farm sites during spring and summer 1909 and 1910, selling thousands of acres. And this is kind of a pattern with Heyward. He gets involved in things and then he kind of doesn't pay due diligence and attention to them. And basically because the Tri-State Land Company had bondholders, they're like, dude, you're not doing your job. Do your job or get out. And he didn't do his job, so they booted him out and he lost his job. And this happens quite often to Heyward in his life. And you and I can sit and speculate after all of that why those things happen, but it'll always just be speculation. In 1916, we got a second sugar factory plant in Gearing, then refineries in Baird, Lyman, Minnetonka, and Mitchell. And when I moved here in 2007, the Mitchell one was still running, and it closed sometime after I moved here. Mm-hmm. What do you call it? The silos are still there.
The silos are still there. The chimneys are still there.
Yeah.
The main factory floor is still there. And it's mainly used, the one out in Mitchell is used for grain storage now.
Yeah, I think all of them are now like different kind of storage. But I haven't, again, we're not doing the sugar factory story right now. By 1928, the 6 refineries were producing 2.5 million 100-pound sacks of flour annually. Not only were farmers in the refinery prospering, but the beet tops were also used as cattle feed along with a pulp byproduct, which the manure from the cattle was redeployed as while the manure from the cattle was redeployed as fertilizer for the beet fields. So they're using everything. You know, they use the beet tops, feed it to the cows, and then when the cows poop, take their manure and fertilize the beets. It's this giant circle.
And then during the refinery process, what isn't used as pure sugar is put back into molasses. And so even the sugar itself is used, the byproduct molasses is used and that kind of stuff.
And the factory here still does molasses, sugar, brown sugar, you know, all your different sugars. And if you ever get the chance, I don't know, they usually do it the first Wednesday night, I think, of December. They have a limited amount of tours to the sugar factory. It used to be $25. I think it's $40 now. All the money goes to
keeping the thing up.
No. All the money raised during that tour goes to scholarships. And there's a limited amount of slots. So when you see that little press release, call right then and there and get your spot because it gets filled up pretty quickly. I got to go once. The ag reporter called. It was a very, very cold day. And she lived out in the country in Torrington and couldn't get out of her house. So she asked me if I would go cover it for the paper. And then the next year when the press release came through, I called and signed Paul and I up so we could take the tour. It's an absolutely fascinating tour. You get you get a little film on the history of the place, and then you get the tour of the factory, see how everything is made, and then you get a nice dinner as well afterwards.
Oh,
so
I don't remember dinner.
Yeah,
Jeez.
it was totally
I must have been on
awesome.
the school tour.
Yeah, you must have been with the school because I paid money.
Yeah, I don't remember no dinner.
and it's really, really fascinating to see because I knew they made sugar from sugar beets, and literally this was 2013 or 2014 when I went on the tour for the paper and wrote about it. I didn't know they did molasses or brown sugar, and they explained the whole process of how that works, and it was just absolutely fascinating.
And I was kind of a funny kid. I didn't know sugar came from sugar cane until later in my life. I assumed they always came from sugar beets because I grew up around it. And it's like, white sugar comes from this beet. That's what I was told. So it's like, wasn't until much later that I learned that it's like, oh, there's such a thing as sugar cane, and that's originally where sugar came from. So.
My mom toured a sugar cane factory or plantation in Hawaii, and she sent me this big old stick of sugar cane that I gnawed on for a while. And I remember learning in school how they used to do sugar cane, and when I don't know why they have sugar cane in Tanzania. I didn't get that far, but I stood there and I watched this guy. He was using one of them old style things to strip the stuff, and I got some sugar cane there too. I don't know if it was just a little local thing that they had going on, or if
it could be.
I don't know enough about Tanzania's economy to know.
I know enough about Hawaii. It's a whole like native invasion scandal thing. Like.
Yeah, we're not going to get into that because that's Hawaii. So in 1930, Great Western was touted as one of the largest sugar refiners in the world. And they refine a lot of sugar. But let's get back to Heyward. The sugar factory, again, is a story for another day, but you can see how he's intertwined in all of this. And I wanted to do a story on him because he kind of helped make Scottsbluff what it is today. Preston noted that Heyward still owned stocks and bonds in the Tri-State Company, and while he was secretary, so technically an employee, of the Farmers Irrigation District, he was able to continue using their water. So he helped to sell the rest of the tri-state real estate and managed his farm in Scottsbluff County. He continued to own land in the North Platte Valley even after he moved back east, where he sold stock for the Savannah Sugar Refinery in Savannah, Georgia. And Jack Preston wrote, Leavitt was a visionary with the ability to attract investors with the large amounts of capital necessary to promote his projects. However, he seldom persevered long enough to profit from these projects. And I tend to agree with Jack Preston here. Heyward was great at recognizing good investments, was always kind of ahead of the game, and could sweet talk, it seems, anybody into investing in his ideas. But with the information we have, he seems to get easily distracted or bored or whatever, and doesn't continue to follow through with on a lot of stuff. And when you learn about all the things he did, he should have been much wealthier than he was, and shouldn't have had most of the financial difficulties he had. Now, we can look today and speculate and maybe make a guess at ADHD or something,
Well,
but we don't
Some people
we don't
just
know.
aren't good with money.
Yeah, he could have just blown all the money, or all the money he got he spent to send his kids to nice schools.
That's very. I can actually agree with that.
Yeah, and that seems to me more like, I think if it was me, I'd get to a point where, like, okay, we used my money to send my kids to good schools, and I'm making enough money. I don't need to make more money. And then I just kind of don't pay attention to my investments anymore. And I can see where, let's not jump on a mental health bandwagon when it very much just could have been he was like, man, I did what I wanted to do. I don't care anymore. And then he moves on to the next project. We don't know, because we don't have any notes from him saying why he did this, that, or the other thing. So
I don't judge him.
yeah, I don't either.
If you have the money, screw it. You have the money.
Yeah, he still had tons of money, even with whatever mistakes he made in life. So it was good that he had a wealthy family, because he got that leg up to begin with. And then with his connections from his classmates from Harvard, he could put some of those dreams he had into action and made money doing that. He also was really good at promoting sugar beets as a viable project. And, we still see that every day here in Scottsbluff.
And smell it.
Yes, we can smell it some days too. Most days I can see the smoke rise, the smoke rising out of the chimneys from my house. If I had a clear line of sight, so if you just went and demolished all the houses between me and the sugar factory, I could actually see the sugar factory from my house. But, nobody's going to let me demolish houses just to look at the sugar factory.
Don't worry, you'll still be
Yeah,
able to smell it.
you'll still smell it. I still think that Heyward was very influential in getting this town started and getting it going. And even when he moved to Georgia, the things he started still went on. We still have the Tri-State Canal. It's a major canal system here in the Panhandle where all the farmers and ranchers or farmers get their water from. We still have the sugar factory. We have the successors to the Tri-State Land Company. But Heyward was instrumental in getting all of that started. You don't have that stuff start, you're not going to have a downtown Scottsbluff. You're not going to have a hospital that starts in downtown Scottsbluff and now is a giant, level 3 trauma center. You're not going to have the schools. You're not going to have the college. You're not going to have the things you have here today without Heyward Leavitt. That's my opinion. We could argue about that all day, but that's to me what I think of Heyward. And I want to share one story with Jack Preston wrote about Heyward, which I think succinctly sums up Heyward, but also gives you an idea about his character and personality. Leavitt was a colorful character who commanded attention when he entered the room. Once, when trying to catch up with George Holdridge, Burlington Railroad general manager, Leavitt stepped out onto the railroad tracks and flagged down Holdridge's private train to join him for the remainder of the journey. While in Scottsbluff County, Leavitt was civic-minded, helping to establish the local Boy Scouts, the Western Nebraska football team, and the Scottsbluff Country Club. Another thing that's still out here.
Yeah.
When he traveled, his personal secretary accompanied him to take his dictation, behavior that the local women considered scandalous. The Love Life of Heyward G. Leavitt was the title of a paper given at a women's club in Scottsbluff. So his secretary is taking notes of things that he's doing, and then they put it into this little scandalous thing that they read out to the women's club. He also was like, hey, I need to talk to this dude. Couldn't get in touch with him, so he's like, oh, his train's coming through town. I'm just going to go stand on the tracks till they stop, and then I'll hop onto the tracks and talk to the guy. He's like, that's a logical decision. I'm just going to go do it. Yeah.
It seems okay.
Yeah, so he seems like, pretty decent guy. Maybe did a couple of, don't stand on the railroad tracks, guys, because they ain't going to stop for you today.
The trains go a lot faster than they used to.
Heyward died on September 5th, 1929 in New York City. Alvina, who was living in Belmont, Massachusetts, received an income from 2/3 of his estate for the rest of her life. Heyward's friend, Louise Sarson of Honolulu, received the other 1/3 of his estate for the rest of her life. I did not find any info about a divorce, but he died in New York City. His wife was living in Belmont, Massachusetts.
And Louise is living in Hawaii.
And Louise is living
Hawaii.
And Louise is living in Honolulu, and his estate split between the two of them. Granted, Alvina got 2/3 and she got 1/3, but yeah.
Given the size of his estate.
Yeah. But I'm
sure Louise Sarson lived happily in Honolulu for the rest of her life.
Yes, she probably did. And when Alvina and Louise passed away, the estate then passed on to Alvina and Heyward's children. So I'm guessing Alvina probably got 2/3 just because she had multiple children with him and probably was there for the most part. And, I don't know what happened to him. I'm not getting into the scandalous life of Heyward Leavitt. I don't even know if there's any documentation out there. I couldn't find any, whatever. But I do think he's an important early person in this area, helped to get things going. Yes. Just like I would love, there's a lot of research I need to do because I know everybody knows about the coffees up in Harrison, but they were very influential up there. There's Coffee Park and a bunch of...
coffees are a big family.
Yeah, but I don't know enough at this point in time to do that, but just from what people have told me, the coffees were very influential up in northwestern Nebraska.
We'll gotta take you up north to Harrison and go meet you some.
Yeah, haven't met any.
There's coffees up in Harrison.
So that's that for this time. A little bit shorter episode than the last few, but hopefully y'all enjoyed it. And we'll be back next time with something else new. You just have to come back and listen to whatever it is that I decide to do. As always, I'm Irene.
And I'm Hunter.
And this is Storytelling on the Plains.